30 years and had businesses?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Well,
So
I
their
don't feel
kids should be a
sorry for
kid.
them because
You,
they
it's
had
not.
the money
It's not
and
really
the
about you
way to
feeling.
go legally.
It's really not. It's really not you about you feeling sorry.
No, no,
Let
no,
me ask you
no.
something though.
Well, okay,
What
then let me ask you this.
when was
Why
that
are
law?
people not
Hold up,
legally
hold on though.
immigrating to America and they know it's a great country? So
Okay,
why
hold
are
on.
you not respecting us and our laws?
No, y'all. It's being respected. It's
No,
being
it's not.
respected.
Not if you come here and you're here for 30 years, you're able to make a living, and then you still don't become a citizen.
You still
That
don't become a citizen.
says to me
So
that
that
you're
means
only
that
here to
so
use our system as a welfare system to get what you want,
but they're
but
not
you
using it
don't
as a
want to
welfare
really
system.
be an American. You
No, they
don't
want to
really
be
want to
they
join
want
Well,
to
I
our
would
be
say
American. But listen,
Americanness.
when was that law, that 14th Amendment law made? It was made when?
Right after emancipation of the slaves within
In what, 1800s, right?
1866.
So this is what y'all don't understand. We understand the law was made for, yes, the children of slaves. But what y'all gotta understand is things change. It was a
Well,
law
doctrine
at
has
one point.
changed.
Hold up. The law at one point was slavery was the law.
And they
And
wrote
it
it into
changed,
the
right?
Constitution.
And it changed though, right?
But it was written. It's a doctrine written. They went in and literally amended the Constitution
All
to
I'm,
notate what happened. You
all I'm
just
saying is
can't
though,
change it because you feel like changing it.
no,
There's
but
a
I'm not
process.
saying that, but at the same time, come on, 1860, we're in 2025.
well, okay,
You
Again,
get what I'm saying? That's
let me interject
it's for
something.
me, it's historical, right? I'm a descendant.
Well, let me interject something because you know our Constitution is over 200 years old, but we still use our Constitution. The Constitution is Constitution. The amendments are the amendments. It doesn't matter how many centuries ago that it was written. 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, ratified in 1868, is a cornerstone of American law, primarily addressing citizenship, equal protection under the law, and due process. It defines citizenship as birthright or naturalization within the U.S. and prohibits states from infringing on citizens' privileges and immunities, the depriving them of life, liberty, and property without due process, or denying them equal protection under the law. Um, the citizenship, the amendment declares that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to its jurisdictions are citizens of both the United States and the state where they reside. This clause is particularly important for addressing citizenship for formerly enslaved people and their descendants. So here's the thing. What has been happening for a very long time when we're talking about this immigration is people are taking advantage, illegals, undocumented. People say undocumented because that's nicer, but undocumented illegals, it doesn't matter, take advantage of the 14th Amendment. And during that time when it was written for the purpose of people who were enslaved and the children. With that said, fast forward to today, people are having quote unquote anchor babies just so that their children could be American citizens, which means that gives them more weight to be able to stay here and not be deported. They have anchor hospitals throughout the state of California, taking advantage of our laws. So under the Biden administration, because this is my issue. My issue is really the 4 years under the Biden administration, they actually allowed 10 plus million people to cross that border from all over the world, not just South America. And that is a security risk. No vetting, no nothing, but they were giving them healthcare, education, housing, jobs, credit cards, cell phones, work permits, all of these things in these blue cities, in these blue states, in these blue districts, and literally ignoring their own American citizens, their constituents. They also was giving them mental health, resources, everything under the sun.
the immigrants was getting all that.
The illegals that crossed that
Illegal.
border under the Biden administration. Now, what the Biden administration could have done, because they knew Trump was going to go in and, initiate ICE to do their job, They could have had a record of all the thousands of people that were committing crimes and just hand it over to ICE and say, okay, go and get these people. If you wanted to protect families and mothers and children, so why didn't you just hand over all of the criminals that were arrested for committing horrific crimes when they were here so that ICE could focus on them? They didn't do that because they would arrest them, particularly in New York City, and release them and say, hey, promise us you'll come back on this court date instead of just holding them. And then they didn't even have a permanent address. They had none of their information. And if they did have any type of information on these people because they had that 1-800 app or whatever, I don't know if they even handed over that data to the new administration. So basically, they blindly allowed 10 million people to come in here blindly with no track of them. So now that Trump, okay, we're just going to go and take everybody, the people who were undocumented from 10 years ago, living their life, to the people who just came here yesterday. Why? Because this prior administration did not do their due diligence. And if they really wanted to protect you, then they would have just handed over the criminals.
I have to just say that the 10 million plus people that entered undocumented doesn't correlate with the census that we have of undocumented immigrants, which is closer to 13.5 million people. So if Biden Harris would have allowed 10 million undocumented immigrants to come in, being that there was 11 million undocumented immigrants prior to that administration, we would have over 21 million undocumented immigrants. And that just isn't true when we look at the census of, population and the undocumented.
What census? They're not counting this.
They count them in the census.
So that number that it is over 20 million illegals, they're not counted in the census because they cannot be counted.
Oh, certain states, Dana, they were counting them. That's the whole thing. Also, so the Democrats can hold.
No. They were counting bodies. They weren't counting people as far as male, female, first, last name, black, white. They're
correct.
Okay. Bodies, and that's the difference. And honestly, they didn't even get a chance to kind of do that in full force because their person did not get elected. If Kamala Harris was elected president, she would have gave them a fast track to citizenship. All those 10 million plus people would have been citizens already.
I think y'all really think 10 million really can't do that?
Abby, wait, I want to have to finish it.
So I did want to say that when we look at undocumented population, we can gather a roundabout number of how many we have, being that 50% of them tend to apply for ITIN numbers, given that the American system does allow for a type of tracking of them. This is why Donald Trump asked the IRS to give them information on undocumented immigrants so that they could then go and take that information that they were using the ITIN numbers and paying their taxes and filing taxes, which I want to say is close to 50%. And then 46% of those that are undocumented immigrants came in with visas and are overstayed visas. So there is a pretty accurate number that we can kind of conclude every year, which we do. And we see an influx coming in, but 10 million being happening in the years that Biden was president is just not an accurate number. And also saying that they're using welfare is also inaccurate, being that federal programs have to have a social security. They do not take ITIN numbers. So that puts a lot of federal programs out of the availability for undocumented immigrants. So undocumented immigrants cannot get food stamps that are federally funded, cannot get CHIP that is federally funded. Anything that is federally funded that needs a social security, they are ineligible for.
Even they were getting it. See, you're talking about the protocol for citizens. For citizens, you have to have an address, you have to have a social security number. What was happening, and I'm specifically talking about the Biden administration. Hold on for a second. Wilson, are you there? Okay, there you go. All right. So what was happening under the Biden administration, I should have invited P. Ray to come up on a panel because she's from Chicago, and Chicago was ground zero for the mass influx of illegals.
Could I say something real quick, Dan? I'm sorry that I want to interrupt you, but I don't want to lose this. So when we speak of federally funded programs, we're talking about programs that are basically the federal government is paying for those programs
Yeah.
to be given out. So if it's a state program like Medi-Cal, those programs are state funded, which
What was
this is
happening?
why I
So,
use
I get
California.
all that, and this is what I'm telling you. Under the Biden administration, they sent billions of dollars to the state of Illinois, to the city of Chicago, to the state of New York, to the city of New York, Massachusetts, Colorado, i.e. Denver, California, LA. They sent money because there were so many organizations. They gave out so many grants. A lot of companies, a lot of corporations made millions and billions of dollars because the federal and the state were funding a lot of organizations that were giving them food stamps. They did get food stamps. They did get health care. They did get housing. And this money was coming from the federal government.
So I think that the confusion here becomes that we label all immigrants undocumented immigrants, but asylum seekers, like those South Africans that were brought from South
Mm,
Africa,
right.
those are people that are eligible for federal grants. And those are people that do go through a legal process. Our immigration system tells asylum seekers to cross the border. It does not say legal or illegally. And then they have either 180 days or 360 days to apply for asylum. And then they are in pending status until they see a immigration judge. So those people do have an availability to federally funded welfare programs, but undocumented
Okay, what
immigrants
was
do
wait, wait,
not.
wait. So
So
They can't.
when we had the illegal canvas crossing the border under the Biden administration, and they were being put up in hotels in New York, they were giving visas, they were giving food stamps, they were giving cell phones. Who funded that? Who funded that?
so I want to say that some of those were
No, no, no,
asylum
no, no, no,
seekers, and
no.
if
When
they
see, this is the thing. The people who crossed that border, the canvases, they were not all see. United States, and this is a fact. United States, we only allow 200,000 people to apply for asylum, to be asylum seekers. That's it. We have a cap, but what crossed that border, let's say the first year of the Biden administration was over 2 million. So all those people were not asylum seekers.